Yo, what's up, everybody? Chris Book Podcast here, episode number 77. It's been a long time since I did this. It's been about 2 weeks now. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling fresh. We ran into some issues with my schedule where I coach high school football. We started double sessions 2 weeks ago. Trying to run the business here. I'm losing my college helpers. I'm behind on everything, so I said, podcast, I'm pressing pause on you. We're going to revisit you in 2 weeks here. I think it was a good break. Took in a lot of content here, but today we're going to be focusing on two things. We're going to be focusing on the great polymath, artist, thinker, philosopher, Leonardo da Vinci, and being a parent now. So we're going to start with the Da Vinci Book written by Walter Isaacson. Great book. We're not going to go into in-depth detail about the ins and outs of this man's life, but let me tell you something. 523 pages of content, and I was into it, man. I loved it. I read in the mornings. I drink coffee and read every morning. I was looking forward to the next day, just waking up and getting down there and doing a few stretches while I'm reading a book. So thumbs up to that. The next, I'm going on this biography kick now to end the year. I'm trying to hit 52 books this year. I'm at about 40. So now I'm going to get into the thick ones and finish the year reading a bunch of these thick biographies. I got Da Vinci down. I'm going to read Franklin. I'm going to read Einstein. Then I'm going to read Jobs. And then I'm going to go back to Founding Fathers. I'm going to read Washington. I'm going to read John Adams. That's 6 books. Whatever it is, right? 6 total. In the last 4 months of the year, they're all 500 plus pagers. And at the same time, I'm going to be listening to some books too, because the audio book, man, when I'm driving to football practice, 20 minutes there, 20 minutes back, the audio book has been wonderful. I've been getting some classics in while I'm driving, which is pretty cool. But anyhow, we're going to get back to Da Vinci. And Isaacson finishes his book talking about a bunch of key points here that after studying Da Vinci and after putting this 500 plus page book together, he kind of started boiling down a lot of things, some themes here. It looks like there's probably 15 to 20 of these things, and I want to review these themes here. Stuff that was going on in the late 1400s, early 1500s when Da Vinci ended up dying. Some of these concepts here, we need to apply these to how we raise kids, coach kids, work with kids, and then after that, we're going to be talking about just some lessons that I've kind of learned lately of just being a parent in general of a pretty cool, awesome little 3-year-old. So, number 1, from Isaacson, be curious, relentlessly curious. Da Vinci was interested in anything and everything. He got criticized often because he was always going down these different paths. They're like, why don't you just focus on art? You can make this amount of money if you just take the commission with this guy. Da Vinci's like, I don't want to make a portrait of another guy's wife. Like, I'm done with that. I want to do things I'm interested in. I'm going to go study horses. I'm going to go look at cadavers. I'm going to try to figure out a way to square a circle. And all the other stuff that he was getting into. He studied the sky. He wanted to know what the tongue of a woodpecker looked like. All of these things, man. He was even looking at dragonflies and how their wings, some wings go up and others go down at the same moment in time. This guy was super observant, right? Because he was curious. He always wanted to know what was going on and how things worked. To kind of hammer that point home, there was another great mind, Albert Einstein. I have no special talents. I'm just passionately curious. This is a recurring theme with a lot of great thinkers. A lot of people that want to change the world, they have to think in these ways of they're already born with this ability to think differently. But you combine that with endless amounts of curiosity, and you're probably going to find something special there. Now, his next point here, number 2. I'm not going to number these because I'm losing track. Next point, seek knowledge for its own sake. Not all knowledge needs to be useful. When we talked about Da Vinci, when he created this Mona Lisa, man, you look at the intricacies of the Mona Lisa. I see the painting, I'm just like, I don't understand what's going on here. But then I read the biography, and I read all of the details that are in that painting. The facial expressions, studied endless amounts of cadavers to understand the face, the skull, the muscles behind it, the things that moved, dilating of pupils. He had the ability to make the Mona Lisa's eyes look, almost feel like they're looking at you no matter where you are in the room. The background of that painting, light is hitting the road, light is hitting different objects. You have this wonderful, lush backdrop, the reflection of the light off of certain things, the shadowing, the shading, all that stuff, right? He spent his entire life just developing knowledge. And then he was able to use that knowledge to create a wonderful piece of art. And I think about that in our own personal life, I remember back in the day when I'm at LA Fitness, I'm reading some book on history. People are like, what the hell are you reading that for? That has nothing to do with what you work with here. But I'm like, I might read this book and one day I'm going to be able to connect with somebody because I know this, right? I mean, I'm listening to the books that the kids I coach, they have to listen to Of Mice and Men, for example. One of the freshman quarterbacks. I'm like, oh, I'll listen to that. We could talk about it when we're at football here. So every day, man, he's coming in. He's like, man, I can't believe they did that to the dog. And I'm like, just wait to the end, brother. We're having these little conversations here. Everything that you accumulate matters. All of it is experience, and you're going to one day build something special, just like Da Vinci did with the Mona Lisa. All right? Retain a childlike sense of wonder. My daughter gets excited about just about anything. She's 3.5. We lose that as we get older, as we move into adulthood. Nothing gets us excited like it did when we were a 3-year-old getting a new gift. Observe, like I said about the dragonfly wings, man. To have the ability to just sit there and watch how little bugs, little flies, whatever it may be, fly. Or to have the ability to try to look at a woodpecker and their freaking head is just hammering into a piece of wood, right? Or their beak, whatever it is. And to try to figure out how things work in that animal, man, that's pretty... You need to have some serious observational skills. And it's not just looking at something, it's really looking at it. It's taking the time and trying to figure out what is going on there. Start with, in addition to that now, start with the details. When he did a lot of his drawings, when he did a lot of things, he wanted to start with the little stuff that to him mattered. He wanted to make sure he had some of these details right. And if he didn't have it right, he was a guy that never really had finished projects because he was always fine-tuning things. The Mona Lisa, for example, was started in 1503. He ended it in, I think, 1517 is when they think it was, and he carried it with him everywhere he went. He moved 3 to 4 times. He always went with different paintings because he was always touching them up. Once his technique got a little bit better, once he gained a little bit more knowledge, he revised his artwork. And that was something special there. Nothing was finished. There was always some touch-ups that can be made. That frustrated a lot of people that hired him, but that's just the way that he worked, man. It was just always evolving. Nothing was finished. See things unseen. We talked about it with the observational stuff. Just having the ability, most of the people are kind of aloof, right? They're not walking around seeing things going on here. And I think it's important for us. I think I'm pretty nosy, we could say, or we could spin it in a positive light and say observant. But I'm always trying to figure out what's going on around here. And I see some of those qualities in my daughter, so I give her the thumbs up. She could look around, she could ask questions, it doesn't matter. The only way you're going to be able to see things unseen is if you're actually working and observing and looking for these fine details. Go down rabbit holes. We kind of touched on this already, right? With the curiosity thing. Don't be afraid to just pursue a subject. If it interests you and you want to dive in and learn as much as you can about something, go down that path and go ahead and do it. If it doesn't apply to your job, if it doesn't apply to your family, if it doesn't apply to whatever, who cares, man? This is something that people kind of, they feel that like maybe somebody's going to judge them if they're doing this or that, right? It's like, who cares? Give in, go down some rabbit holes, do whatever you want to do, learn whatever you want to learn, and keep trying to expand yourself, right? Just like his artwork, right? It was always evolving. There was never a finished product here. Get distracted, all right? This sounds interesting, right? But, I think sometimes when we think about this, we could have a goal and we could have this tunnel vision, which sounds great, right? But sometimes there might be something going on in the peripheries here that we just can't, that we don't see because we're so focused on things. And we don't take time to just kind of sit back, see what's going on, and get distracted by something else, right? A lot of the times, the great things that, the great moments, the great times that you have is those impromptu things where, hey, we're going to go for a walk. Next thing you know, we're out, splashing around in a creek, and then we're late, or Emmy's getting to bed late because we got distracted by having some fun, going down some rabbit holes maybe, or doing things entertaining, right? So there is a positive with getting distracted, right? Respect facts. Some things we can't argue with, right? We got to know, not everything is gray area, right? Even though it does appear that way sometimes there is black and white in the world, and we need to know what they are, and we need to have respect for that. Along with getting distracted, like we just spoke about, procrastinate. He often, when he was painting, I forget what the piece of artwork was, but he's in there painting and he's got this big commission. People are relying on him to get this painting in a church done. He would show up there, he would look around, he would make 1 or 2 marks, then he would go home. And these people are like, what the heck's going on? They just thought that he didn't care, but what he was doing was, just trying to take some time away from the project, procrastinate a little bit, let things develop slowly. Don't get caught up with deadlines where you end up rushing. Take your time, procrastinate, see the whole thing, try some stuff out at home, maybe try a different idea at home, come back to it. Always trying to create that nice piece of work. Let the perfect be the enemy of good. Let the perfect be the enemy of good. Good enough was not something Da Vinci wanted to do. He wanted everything to be great. He wanted it to be perfect. Even though he didn't necessarily always believe in perfection, he didn't want to just do something to do something. If he was doing it, it was going to be the best thing he could do. And that's why he procrastinated on things. That's why he allowed himself to get distracted. That's why he took so much time to observe and get down in the details and to be curious and to explore and experience new things, because he wanted it to be as close to perfect as possible. Some other stuff here, man. Think visually. Think visually. See with the eyes, right? Or no, think with your eyes. Avoid silos. Not sure what that one meant, boys and girls. I'm sorry about that. I should have looked into some details. Let your reach exceed your grasp. You know, we could only affect the people around us, right? If we think that way, we're not going to be able to make these big, great, wonderful changes in the world. We have to understand that what we do every day could affect not only the people in our house, but maybe in our town, in our community, in our state, in our country, in the world. Let your reach exceed your grasp. Indulge in fantasy, right? Think, wonder, explore, right? That's what we need to be doing. Create for yourself, not just for patrons. There's a story about the Mona Lisa that said this was a woman, you know, just from an average family, and he saw her and he thought that she was something special, was a family friend, and he wanted to paint. He never gave that painting to whoever commissioned it. Meanwhile, there's another, you know, wealthy queen or relative of somebody super wealthy. This woman was after him for years to paint a portrait of her, and he was like, he didn't want to do it. She was boring, she was plain. He didn't want to do it, but when he saw Lisa, Mona Lisa, he was like, I want to paint that girl, and he went and did it. So create for yourself. Do it because you want to do it, not just for patrons, not just for money. Collaborate, man. We need to be able to work with other people. This thing with COVID-19 kept everybody in the house. We weren't able to get out. We weren't able to talk to people. I use this. I'm hoping to get some collaboration going from this, right, where I hope somebody sees this and maybe ask me some questions or something. You know, we have all of these things that are going through our brains, and we need to be able to bounce them off people, because maybe they have the same thought going on, but they might have a little tweak to what I'm thinking, and then based off of that tweak, I might be able to come back with something, and next thing you know, we have something created that's really great and wonderful. Make lists. Write it down. Follow. Don't be afraid to get distracted. Remember that rule. But make lists so you know what's going on, right? Know the things that you got to do. Take notes on paper. The great thing about him, man, and I started to adopt this, I had these red books. I had the red books, and I never really was putting them to good use. One of them I have random thoughts in. If I hear an interesting thing from a book, I'll write it in there. If I listen to a podcast I like, I'll write it down. Maybe I'll revisit it in the future. Number 2, random business ideas, which seem to be a never-ending thing through my brain. Number 3 is coaching football. And I just got stuff written everywhere. You look at Da Vinci's notes, he has a picture of, he's trying to learn Latin and he's writing stuff down. So he was left-handed, so he wrote right to left. So they called it mirror script. On pages of his practicing of Latin, there's a picture of a disgruntled, angry-looking face. So when you see that, you know, they speculated that maybe he got so annoyed with trying to learn Latin that he just wrote this picture of like the old warrior soldier guy that looks super grumpy and annoyed. He has other stuff. He has, you know, a picture of a self-portrait on the same page as a horse's leg, you know, all of this stuff, right? And then his last note here that Isaacson had in his book, be open to mystery. Just be open to anything, right? We don't want to shut things out. There's some intriguing things out there, right? We have to keep an open mind, and we have to be willing to explore these things. When it says take notes on paper, there's one more thing that I remember. I read Stephen Johnson's book. I think it's where good ideas come from, and it talks about this old practice. And when I read the Franklin biography, I'm wondering if it's going to be in there. They called them commonplace books, where you just kind of wrote whatever you needed to write down, you know, like that's what you did. You just put it in your commonplace book. And I think there's a benefit to putting something down with your hand, writing it, than there is just typing it. When I type stuff, I just lose it. Like I put in my notes, and then what? Like I'm like, oh wait, I do have it somewhere. Then you're searching for, you have like 27 different notes open up on your phone. I'm like, there's nothing organized about it, right? So write stuff down. Be open to mystery. Explore. Be curious. All of that stuff, man. I think it's pretty great. Maybe I put this in a blog or something so that we could kind of list it out and have it all available for you to read and for you to reference if you ever need it, okay? Now, moving on from that, some of these notes here, everybody, these are lessons learned from Da Vinci that we could apply as adults, but also as we parent our children, right? And it's, you know, I think it was, I don't know, it's probably listening to Jordan Peterson, because that just seems to be the common thing where I get some of these things, right? But I forget where he got it from, but it's like offer your child, the child that you have, my young little girl, you got to offer her up to the world, right? And if you're able to instill some of these things that we just talked about in your daughter, in your child, we'll say, you're going to be able to trust them to do the right thing when they're out there. They're obviously going to make mistakes, but if you teach them these things, to be observant, to be curious, to create things for yourself, not for others, to collaborate with others, to make lists. If you're able to do that, if you teach some of those good character qualities like truth and courage and what love means, if you're able to teach them this, you could put them out there and you could trust that they'll be okay. You cannot keep your kids sheltered, right? You cannot do it. A couple weeks ago we were at our daughter's preschool and it was like a get comfortable with the school, meet the teacher type night. We're out in the garden there and jokingly some moms were like, oh, I'm going to be a mess when we drop our kid off the first day. And you probably are, right? But you need to do it, right? And now that they're 3 or 4 years old, everything that you did from day one to whenever preschool starts, all of that stuff matters. All of that stuff is going to help you be more comfortable knowing that we did a great job with our child and that we could send them to preschool and we could trust that they're going to do the right thing. And they're probably going to get in trouble. They're probably not going to share at some point. But for the most part, they're going to be truthful. They're going to be kind to others. They're going to be a team player. They're going to play with others. They're not going to have these random fits if something doesn't go their way. These are the things that you need to instill, all right? Let's be a team player. Let's be that kid that people want to play with. Let's be that person that our teacher goes to if they need a little bit of help with things, right? That's the stuff that we need to do. So, now, moving on from there, like I said, you cannot keep your kids sheltered. If you keep them sheltered and you want to protect them, loud truck running by. Sorry about that, they're paving the road out front. If you keep your kids sheltered, if you protect them, if you keep them in a padded room, they're never going to be able to expand and grow. They're never going to be able to learn some tough lessons. They're never going to be able to figure that, hey, I could do this on my own. You let them do I don't know where this came from. My daughter's got this little toughness quality to her where she fell down, scuffed her knee bad, cried. 2 minutes later, we didn't really say anything. She was back on the same step, jumping off of it or running off of it, whatever it was. After she landed on her feet, I exhaled and was like, phew, that's great. Because if we would have stopped her from doing that, she might have never wanted to try something like that for a while anyway. Handstands against the door this morning. She puts her feet on the wall. She's doing a handstand, right? With her feet against the wall. She falls, bumps her knee on the ground. She's hurting. She's stunned a little bit. Nobody really reacts to it. She gets up, tell her she did a great job. A minute later, she's practicing the handstand again, right? It's like what they say about riding horses. You got to get back on the horse. If you fall off, you cannot end that way. You cannot let the horse know that it's acceptable behavior to fall off. And you cannot, you have to get back on the horse so that not only the horse knows that, but that also you know that as a human being, that yes, you might fall, but you're going to get back up. I coach high school football, like I said. Emmy comes to practices some days. She sees football players get knocked down. Those are her words. But they get back up. And I hope her seeing that has instilled that kind of mentality with her. And if you don't have an opportunity like that, you just need to do that as a parent, right? You need to be like, hey, yes, you fell down, but you got up and you're okay. Let's continue to keep doing what we're doing here, all right? So that's one thing, right? We talked about the knee scuff, the handstands, falling off a horse, trying again. As a parent, you want to mitigate risk, but you also want them to explore and try things that are just a little bit more riskier than what they've done previously, okay? So let's say you have a super cautious kid that doesn't want to, jump off of a box that's this high off the ground, 2 inches off the ground. Maybe you hold their hand for that, and eventually you get them to do that from 2 inches, and then maybe you hold their hand and get them doing it from 3 and then 4 inches. And then maybe one day you just decide, hey, there's that 2-inch box again. You think you could jump off it now? And then guess what? Maybe they tried that time. And if they don't, you do whatever they do. You don't force it. You don't say you have to do it. You just let things happen naturally, right? You just try to nudge them and encourage them to try things a little bit more challenging than they were before. And then, one other thing I wanted to talk about with being a parent is I'm trying to see how we could tie this in a little bit with some of the stuff that Da Vinci spoke of. But when we when you're a child, you listen to your parents, you listen to your teachers, you listen to your coaches, you listen to whoever it's probably going to be an adult, right? So most of these kids are going to listen to adults and they're going to do what they're told, right? But what happens if they're not comfortable in a situation? Do you want your kid to just say, yes, ma'am, no, all the time, or yes, sir, all the time? I think the answer to that is actually going to be no. I was at this party over the weekend. There's a bunch of kids there playing. I don't know who knows who. Things are getting wild in the pool. There's drinking going on. There's somebody in their 20s there. He's been drinking. Kids are getting tossed. I hear this little girl talking to herself, and I try to listen to see what she's talking about. And she was like, I don't want to play anymore. She's like saying that to herself. And I was like, so I just go over there. I'm like, hey, you okay? And I only met her once before, literally a year before that, at the same exact party. And we were like, my daughter's in there. This girl was nice to her and playing and whatever. So, I met her twice, but I was playing with her before. Things are fine, right? A bunch of kids in a pool having fun, except at some point in time, things got a little bit awkward, and she didn't want to play anymore with this one individual. So she's sitting there, and I'm sitting next to her, and I'm just going to hang out there a little bit because she seemed upset. And I wasn't really saying much, just hanging. And then the individual comes over and is like trying to make peace with her and like touching her feet and like tickling. And I was like, things were just weird and interesting and awkward. So I just stayed there for a little bit. Things kind of just settled down. The guy left and whatever. Where does that get me? It gets me to tell your kids to say no thank you if they're not comfortable in situations. You know, we ran into this. It was kind of a joking thing. One of Emmy's uncles was like giving her a hard time doing this and that to her. She was tired. She obviously wasn't feeling it. Maurice's like, hey, Emmy, you could tell him no thank you. So Emmy says no thank you. He stops. All is well, right? But that day, that was a learning tool for me. It was a lesson that like, hey, we have to let her know, like, you're allowed to tell an adult no thank you. If you're not comfortable with something, you say you're not comfortable. You say no thank you, I don't want to do this anymore. And it looked like that young girl that we were with in the pool there, she was practicing what to say, but then when the moment came, she didn't actually do it. And then when we drive home and conversing with Marisa, she had concerns that were worse than the things that I was even thinking about. And I'm like, Jesus, what the heck was going on here? Anyhow, it was a weird situation. So as a parent here, this is what we got to do. I learned something that day. I learned something, and I learned that there's probably a better way that I could have handled that situation. And I'm hoping that young girl did too. I'm hoping maybe I could talk to her parents one day or talk to my friends and just be like, hey, what's up with this, man? And try to get to the bottom of this thing here. And hopefully it was nothing, but you never know, right? Things are weird. Sometimes those moments where you think that the least likely person would do something awkward and uncomfortable is actually the one doing it, right? So under the guise of fun, anyhow, it was a tough thing. Teach your kids to say no thank you. If they're not comfortable, they need to express it. They feel those things for a reason. They need to trust those feelings. You don't ever want to say, oh, no, it's not true, and divert to whatever the adult did, right? Because if the adult's always right, if you always believe the adult and you tell your kid, no, that's not right, that's not true, when they get into a situation when they're older and something might actually happen to them, they're not going to speak up because they're just like, my parents don't believe me anyway. Stuff like that happened with these college scandals with like the college gymnasts, with that punk Larry Nassar and that loser Jerry Sandusky. You tell a kid, no, that's not true, no, that's not true, their entire life, guess what? They're not going to be comfortable telling anybody anything. So we got to build these kids up. Let them know that they're strong. Let them know that they're allowed to say no thank you to an adult. If they're not comfortable with the situation, you get out of there, you call your parents, you find somebody you do trust, spend time with them, and don't be vulnerable. Hope you guys like this one, man. Chris Book Podcast is back, and I'm excited about it. Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Google, I don't know what else, but we're out there, man. Like it, share it, give me some feedback, whatever it may be here, but try to get some support up. We're trying to raise it up a little bit. I just threw something off my little makeshift desk here. Yeah, man, like it, subscribe to it, share it, tell me how awesome it is, whatever you want to do, man. Hope you guys like this thing. Peace, everybody.